All right, go live.
There's the Vampiro, whatever.
All right. There's some people watching, I guess. Okay. It's Thursday, August 12th, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about natural disasters. Buckle up, buckaroo. All right, hit M for Hornets. And I guess I got an opening bit.
What's our opening bit?
Right, we were about to do the show on time, but we haven't done a lot of shows lately because a bunch of travel and personal stuff we were doing. But this is the week.
No shows next week either.
Yep, next week. We won't be doing regular.
Ordinary because there is a PAX West next week. Not that we'll be at it.
Yeah,
we wouldn't have done shows next week normally.
But we were delayed doing the show today because I came home to find a copyright strike on our channel, which isn't that the copyright shit comes at us all the time. But it's worth noting that 100% of the bogus copyright things that have come to our channel in the history of our YouTube channel have been for anime. Nothing else ever gets copied. It's only anime stuff. But in this case, it was an audio-only live stream review, like the live show where we reviewed Cells at Work. And the copyright strike, not a claim, but a full-on strike, was for nothing. It was for a still screenshot from the show while we reviewed it.
Which is absolutely fair use.
Absolutely fair use.
From a thing that you're reviewing, right?
Yep.
No, what I find, I'm pretty sure. So if you look on my channel, the only anime thing I've ever posted on my YouTube channel is the episodes where we did the Judge Anime by its cover, which contained still images from many anime.
The Judge Anime from its cover from Anime Boston, and pretty much every anime review we've ever done, they have not strikes, but they all have Sony or someone has monetized your video on them. Every single one.
I haven't checked to see if that's the case.
Every anime panel we've ever done has that. The Judge Animes from the few conventions we did them have that. Every episode of our Antenna show has that, and nothing else on the channel has that. So
let me just check here. Content.
But I guess that was annoying, so I actually had to deal with all the copyright strike stuff because the problem is, even though it's clear fair use, there's basically no upside for us to actually fight it. The actual answer here is that you basically just shouldn't ever do anime stuff on YouTube ever because there's literally no upside for you.
7 Judge Anime by its cover videos that I have on YouTube have no restrictions, nothing whatsoever. They're 100% clean. Even though they contain many images from anime, but those images are in a box in the top corner. They're not like a full screen. I don't think I did too many full screen images, if any. And also, I didn't put the names of any of the anime. I don't
see. That's the key because the videos that are getting strikes have the name of an anime somewhere in the description, and it seems it seems like we know because Nintendo does this too. Anime companies are just they do literal illegal things with copyright, but there's no recourse.
I'm pretty confident what they're doing is they just go on YouTube and they search. In this case, they search for Cells at Work, right? A show that they own the rights to. And they just select all and push claim. They don't actually watch the videos or anything. And I think, they could, obviously there's the perfect system, what they should do, right? But I think a minor change that they could make that would solve a lot of this would simply to be when someone makes a manual claim like this, they should have to put in the time codes of the part of the video where the thing is and write down in text what the thing is in that time code that they're claiming against. There's a screenshot of our copyrighted Cells at Work character at 1 minute and 20 seconds, right? That's it. And if we just require that minimum level and verify that they're not just faking that, right? Just put the minimum verification so they don't just put 1 minute on put the same time code on all of them without actually looking. Force them to watch the videos at least. If they're forced to watch the videos, they can't just search for Cells at Work and click claim, right? That would become too onerous. They would actually have to watch them all. And if that was the case, they would have to, they would be focusing on the ones that were clearly easy to violate. Be like, hey, this is literally an episode of our show that has been uploaded in its entirety. Just the whole, they don't have to click a time code. They can just click, say, whole video. it's our show next, right?
Yep.
Whereas for our video, which is, a video that's fair use is it can be a lot harder. They're going to skip right over when they see just two talking heads there, right? They're not going to waste their time watching an hour of Geek Nights to figure out where the screenshot is up for right?
Yep, because this one in particular was manually created, meaning it wasn't YouTube flagging it. They went and found it.
They let you know if it was like the automatic system that, listens for music and finds a violation versus a human being whose job it is to search and click on things to find copyright violations.
Yep, but I guess
that's nice of them. They do let you know that.
They do. But, I mean, obviously, the only actual solution to this is the U.S. Congress has to pass laws that radically reform copyright in fundamental ways and real protections for fair use. But that's not going to happen ever. So,
in somewhat related, news, Twitch is now just on their own voluntarily giving people who are banned from Twitch more information about why they were banned. It's not like, to the level that it needs to be, but I think that is a positive step in the right direction. It's like, we've banned you, right? Why did we ban you? You violated this rule, and you were streaming on this day, at this time. This is where you broke the rule. This is what just any explanation whatsoever, as opposed to you have violated our terms of service. You're banned. The end.
Yep.
Right? Just a little bit of, it's not full habeas corpus, right? Which is not necessary. But it's, along those same lines of, right, if you're going to punish someone, you have to tell them what they're being punished for, that core principle.
But I guess the moral of this...
It would be good if there was a law. There probably won't be for many, if not for a long time, if ever, that, if you ban someone from your service, you kind of have to explain why, right?
Yep. But basically, because people don't want to risk their entire channel being deleted, they have no choice but to just accept these things and just let these companies take down their videos, give them strikes, etc.
I think what we could do, what I would recommend people do is, if you're a nerd doing anime content specifically, and, you have a channel like, Rims, which has mixed stuff, make a separate channel for your anime biz.
Yep. Because, like I said, and this is something I've talked about this in public and in many other places, but we haven't really talked about it a lot in Geek Nights. This is the reason we as Geek Nights do not make a lot of anime content. Like, we kind of...
It is a major reason. It is not the reason.
Yeah, it's a
significant reason.
It is the reason I have not made more Lieutenant videos, because 100% of them, I have actually had lawyers write things to keep some of those Lieutenant videos up, and it's just not worth the hassle. Like, I'm never making...
We would make more than we do if not for this.
Well, Judge Anime by its cover is super fun to make, and honestly, doing panels at anime cons is also super fun. But here's the subtle thing: if we go to a PAX or a MagFest or any non-anime convention, and we do a panel, we can video that panel and put it on YouTube. We cannot put any anime panels on YouTube.
We can do that as long as we do an anime panel that involves only us talking with no screenshots and no audio or any content from the anime whatsoever.
Oh, you mean don't do any of the fun, awesome types of anime panels?
And then do not mention the names of any anime titles in our title or description on YouTube. Simply say, judge anime by its cover, right? Do not include the names of any anime that would come up in a search, and don't put any videos or screenshots in the content of the panel. Or if you do at the anime con, put the videos into your panel. When you do the YouTube, edit them out so that they're not there, right?
Yep.
Put just put a black box over it and mute the audio and put a subtitle that's the opener to whatever is playing at this time, right?
But without that mixed media, I find that anime panels, especially at the level, the kinds of content that we would like to watch and that people like to see at cons, that pretty much removes the things people actually want to see.
It does remove, you
for example, the most popular anime thing we ever did was at cons at least, were the anime openers from around the world type panels. Those were super popular.
You can't do that.
Yeah,
absolutely cannot do.
Which sucks because that content is great.
That is a great content, but it is literally just playing someone else's stuff that someone else made. Right? It's not something
with
that we made.
With transformative commentary, though. It is clear that panel as presented. All I'm saying
against that.
all I'm saying is that panel as presented is clear, unambiguous fair use.
Sure, I'm not arguing with that, but I'm saying, yeah, you're just showing stuff, right? If you actually have something to say. Right,
Oh, so here's another example.
We could make a panel that's like, the history of some such and such.
You know what panel actually got?
Panels with slides and text and.
You know what panel we did? It was at one of the last Anime Bostons we went to that actually got like one of the biggest audiences we ever had in a room at an anime con. Was when we did that analyzing anime panel where we talked about Utena. And the panel was, we showed very short clips from Utena, like 20 seconds. And then we spent 20 minutes talking about the allegory and the symbolism and like, look, there's one cat, now there's two cats. Look at this frame of animation. What's going on here? That is compelling content, and you literally can't put that anywhere. It's just not worth the hassle.
You could remove the 2 minutes of clip from it. Don't put the word Utena in the title. Put like analyzing a cool anime from the early 90s in your title.
Yep.
And then you would put a link to like, to say, hey, yeah, this clip that you should watch here is Utena episode 3. Start watching it, the 3rd minute to the 6th minute.
But you see what's going on here. That is all a hassle. And that is why the end result of all this.
I'm not saying it's not a hassle, but you can do it.
But I'm saying the end result of that, just because I've never said this out loud on Geek Nights, is that kind of shit is why I don't even bother doing any anime shit other than reviews on the podcast. Like, I gave up. No. I made one AMV, never making one again, etc.
Do anime. Figure out something that you have. If you have something to say about anime, if you have a lot of knowledge about anime, you shouldn't need to actually show the anime, right? It's like if you take a Siskel and Ebert episode, right, and you just, they do on that show, if you've ever watched Siskel and Ebert, they're both dead now, right? If you ever watched that old show where they do movie reviews, they do show clips from the movie in that TV show.
Yeah.
But if you edit out the parts with the clips from the movie, the parts that are just Siskel and Ebert chatting with each other are sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. But that's a show on its own. You don't need.
But without the mixed media, it is far less compelling and a lot fewer people watch.
It is indeed, but you could just upload the talking part only. You could do it, and then they wouldn't come after you.
Yeah, but I'd say that defeats the purpose and ain't worth the effort. So there's a lot of reasons why. You're never going to see more of those Utena episodes. Like, I'm just never even going to bother making that kind of content. Because that show, without showing a clip on the screen or a screenshot, there's no way to have the kind of conversation we're having. Because we're saying things like, look who's in the background in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wondered why the Utena show's dead, that's pretty much it. Some other news that a normal, more traditional Geek Nights meta or opening bit. I biked home from work because I go to the office occasionally. And
the news yet?
No, I don't have a lot of news.
Go long here. Let's go. I'm hungry.
We always go long because we don't do that many shows lately. We also don't talk except during the show.
Let's skip to the news.
No, because this is my news too. This leads into my news.
Oh, it's also your news. Okay.
So biking home today. One, it's like 100 degrees, and two, I encountered the worst car traffic I have literally ever seen or experienced in Manhattan in the entirety of my life today. More gridlock than I have ever seen, to the point that it was blocking bike lanes, and it actually made my commute on a bike take almost 15 more minutes. And for context, that is more than 100% increase from how long it normally takes me to bike home.
I don't think the UN is in session right now.
Nope.
Right? So
it was
I think that's the worst I saw was when the UN was in session.
This was worse than that.
It was only in certain areas because that, in the detour zones that it was super bad.
This was worse than that. And when I got home, I saw an article in the Boston Globe, which is my news, and it basically said that as of now, car traffic has reached or exceeded all the pre-COVID levels everywhere in America. And it's very notable that as this has happened, one, New York City, and there's other articles about this that aren't my news, traffic here is actually the worst it's ever been in New York City history right now. Just generally. And air quality is at historic lows because the only time the air quality was ever good in New York was that brief window during the terrifying heights of the COVID pandemic when nobody was driving. Cars have
there was a time when air quality was good in New York.
Oh, yeah. Before the car existed.
No, it was sucked.
And before industry moved here.
Steam engines.
Yeah.
No, before then, there were still horses and cows. It's before then, before any white people came here. That's
but what's interesting is that
stink until the white people came. Pissed all over it.
The car traffic seems to be the cause of the far majority of the human recognizable pollution in the air here.
In this area, yes, the biggest polluting thing in New York City is cars, followed probably by power plants and stuff.
But it's so hard to
I'm guessing
it's so weird to remember that year which was recently, where New York City just smelled like the world as opposed to smelling like pollution, and now it smells like pollution again. The air quality is bullshit.
Yep. Which leads right into my news that maybe with a new governor, we could get the congestion prices.
Finally.
So I don't know where listeners are or how much they know about what happens in New York.
But you know what? New York news is global news.
Sure. And what country you're in, if you even understand. New York is a state. All right. We're in the United States, but we still have a governor who is not the governor in the Britain pirate sense of governor, but as a governor as in effectively the president of New York. Right? It's like you're the executive, chief in the state government, right? The state, not New York City, right? The whole state includes Rochester, Albany. In fact, the capital is Albany. New York isn't even the freaking capital of the state, even though the governor hangs out in the city most of the time. People only go to Albany when it's time to do.
Not that the governor listens to anything anyone in the city gives a shit about.
No. But anyway, so the governor of New York has been Andrew Cuomo for quite a long time. His father was a governor previously, not the immediately previous governor, but governor a while ago.
Who is he was well respected generally.
No,
not the current one. His father.
Oh, okay. Cuomo won basically on name recognition, which is very powerful in elections, and also because. When you're a Democrat in New York, you got to get elected by the entire state. So even though there may be a lot of, farther left people in parts of the city, as we could see with our mayoral election, a lot of the city is, center or, even by some, depending on where your scale is, conservative Democrats.
But if you go upstate, it's like... It is just like I got guns and stay away.
So Republicans can't possibly win. There's no chance for them in New York State. But if you're a conservative Democrat, right, then you have someone like the president of the U.S.
Because the entirety of the state outside of New York City will vote for that person in the primary, and New York City will split across all the progressive candidates.
And also that person.
Yep, and thus that person will always win the primary.
Anyway, but there hasn't been anyone, there just isn't a person in New York who has had the character, whatever, as a state figure to run against him and have any chance.
Yep.
So it's like even people like me reluctantly kept voting for this guy because what the fuck are you going to do? Well, it's no chance.
Yeah, like who runs against the Democrat in governor races in New York? Literal Nazis.
So... he's been the governor, even though basically everyone votes for him, and then it's just like, we hate you. I voted for you, but I hate you. But there's no choice because the other guy's way worse. There's no right. So he's been governor. He's been doing all sorts of evil shit the whole time he's been governor. Right? People forget that in the olden days, right, years ago, there was like this a group they formed. It was like a commission to find corruption in the state government, and they actually found one of his friends was super corrupt and put him in jail. Right? What's his name? What's that guy's name?
Who are we talking about?
What was the stupid guy's name?
There's Spitzer. There's so many.
No, that's older. New York State.
Oh, I don't have it up, so I'm waiting for you.
What's that guy?
I got nothing.
Forget the guy's name. Anyway. Skelos, right? Sheldon Silver, right? And Skelos.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, all those guys. So, but basically, that anti-corruption commission, it had a name. I forget its name. But it was started to look into Cuomo, right? It was looking into all the other state-level people. It started to look into him.
So he shut it down. He was just like, nope, no more anti-corruption thing.
Yeah, he's like, we found the corrupt people. We're good. Right? It's like he could have been done with that, right? But he survived that. And he basically survived a whole bunch of other shit. during the COVID times, right? He put in a big show of looking good, right? Not like the Florida governor,
Yep.
looking bad. He looked like he was, he made it appear that he had his shit under control and was, doing a better job than the other governors. That turned out to be a facade when you look at the nursing home shit. That could have been the end of him.
The worst part is he was still doing better than most of the governors anyway.
He was the whole IDC thing. People don't know about that.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about that on Geek Nights.
Right, or basically he had Democrats who voted with Republicans that were like on his side in the state legislatures that he didn't have to move to the left, and then we voted them all out mostly. So that undid that business. But yeah, so now finally we finally undid him, his like 10th scandal, right? Is that he was a sex pest. No surprise to anybody. You could tell by the guy's personality that he's that kind of person. He'll just grab some asses. But he got called out by some very brave women who came forth, and the attorney general came down on him, and now he's finally was forced to resign, which is great.
And even better, it's sad that this is what it took, but now we have the first
things we could have made him resign.
Now we have the first woman governor in the history of New York State.
Yeah. So the new governor, who was the person who was the deputy or lieutenant governor, right? She's going to be governor, I guess, in a couple weeks, less than 2 weeks.
And she already announced she's going to run for re-election when the cycle comes up.
Yeah, so Kathy Hochul from Buffalo, interesting thing, right? So what do you make of her, right? Well, obviously better than Cuomo. She's not grabbing any asses, right? So that.
But for me, Zephyr Teachout is still too far right for me. In terms of the governor I want.
But yeah, Kathy Hochul's interesting because she is, probably too far to the right for us. She used to be even further right than she is now, right? It's like she used to be almost Republican, basically. She has moved significantly to the left, but basically it's an improvement, but it's not enough of an improvement. The good news is that when we get to the primaries, right, where she'll have to try to, actually be elected as, governor instead of just, she was elected lieutenant governor, but, whatever. She's going to be running against, Jumaane Williams, who she beat in the primary last time. So.
But Jumaane's power only grows.
Jumaane's power has grown. However, the person who took Cuomo down, Letitia James, also highly likely to run for governor, and Hochul may have a very difficult time beating Letitia James. So we'll see. For me to choose between, it's weird because for me to choose between Tish and Jumaane, that's a tough choice for me, but apparently they don't like each other.
Yeah.
Right? It's like they're not exactly friends, even though they were the past, the current and former city advocates in New York City.
But hopefully, if we keep
each other,
unless the state votes to get rid of the ranked choice thing, the primary will be.
But the primary for governor is still going to be not ranked choice.
Right. Because
it's not it's only the ranked choice is only a city thing. So it'll be a difficult situation there come that time. Which may advantage Hochul depending on who's in and who's out. But also what will be interesting to see is in a couple weeks, right? Or Hochul is going to have to appoint a lieutenant governor. So that's going to be interesting, whoever that is.
And in one last little news that is actually really relevant, of all the COVID things going on, one thing that's very important, and I want to bring it up briefly. We're not going to get into this in depth. We want to get into the main bit. But for the future of things looking better, the U.S. military, the Pentagon, is going to require all service members to get the COVID vaccine basically within a month.
Good.
That's a huge deal. Way more.
Does that only include people who are straight up enlisted /officers?
Yeah, active service members.
So it doesn't include private company guy who's working on the boat. He's not actually in the Navy, but he's on the Navy.
I mean, we don't know for sure because the official thing is not out yet. We don't know exactly who's covered. We do know active service members are covered. We also know
people realize just how many private citizens who work for private companies are on military bases, on boats, on, the food service workers are not, I guess sometimes they might be people who are in the military, but A lot of times it's like that's a company they're hiring to do food service or whatever, right?
But here's why I want to highlight this.
Federal employees.
But there's a bunch of other news. Is like a whole bunch of universities are requiring the vaccine, and so far all the whack jobs.
More and more places are basically saying if you're not vaccinated, you can't, or at least have a fake proof that we're going to try to verify.
And those nut jobs who tried to sue their university saying they didn't want to get the vaccine, the court just smacked them down and said, "Nope, the university's rules. Fuck you." But
I think the big thing that there's a rude awakening for a lot of those anti-vax people is, they try to fake the religious exemption.
Yeah.
And if you try to fake the religious exemption, when it comes right down to it, they're going to check to see if you got any other vaccines. Which and it's like the only way you can fly, even if you're lying about your religion, right? You're an atheist or you're whatever, right? Even if you're lying about it, it's like if they see that you've had another vaccination, then it's that's it.
Yep. I'm not a lawyer, but the way this has been described to me by lawyers in the past was vaguely that the government cannot litigate whether or not your religion is real. Like, obviously, that's just the way the U.S. is. They can't be like, nope, you made up the flying spaghetti monster. That doesn't count. They can't do that. That's why Scientology exists. But what they can do is say that if there's an exception or anything in the law, the thing they can litigate and test is whether or not the belief you profess is, quote, sincerely held. Meaning,
exactly,
if they can show evidence that you're insincere, then they can tell you to go fuck yourself.
That's right. So, like, for example, let's say a Jew, I'll talk about Jews since I am one, that's right, says, "Oh, work, you got to let me leave early on Friday. I'm a very religious Jew," right? They say, "Okay, leave, it's Shabbos, leave. That's what you do," right? That's normal. And then, you bring in pulled pork sandwich for lunch into the office, right? Obviously, we're not talking about situations like spying on you, trying to find out that they're suspicious. We're talking, you bring the pulled pork right into the office and you chow down. And they see you doing that, they can be like, so you can come in on Friday, right? It's like,
yeah, maybe from what I gather, it might come down to that specific stricture. So those two might be unrelated. But if, say, you went on a bunch of vacations, like you didn't do the Shabbos thing consistently, then it would be like, more.
Your boss happens to run into you on Saturday at fucking Disney World, like, and you're lighting a fire and making 2 loops and eating the pulled pork sandwich at Disney World. It's like you.
All I think now is the Scott Pilgrim movie, or like chicken parm isn't vegan.
No,
but anyway, to get it before the reason I bring this up, here's why I think the military thing for active service members is important, and it's not something you would think of. There are 2 things that people are not talking about with this that I think are way more interesting than we're getting a bunch of people vaccinated. One, the people in the military, their choice is not, well, I just won't get the vaccine. It is either you get the vaccine or you are dishonorably discharged.
Yeah, or you could try to find another way to get discharged in time.
Yeah, you could try to get an honorable discharge.
Legitimate excuse to get out, which is not easy.
A dishonorable discharge from the U.S. military is almost like an anti-recommendation. The military is basically saying, fuck this piece of shit.
Yeah, basically, if you get one of those in the United States, then if you try to, after that, if you try to apply for a job, and you put military on your resume, any employer's HR department is going to, make like this they just contact the military to get your service record. It's just standard practice. Like you put a college and they get your transcript, same thing. And if they see a dishonorable discharge there, you're basically they can absolutely discriminate and not hire you because of that easily. And you're very hard time getting a job basically anywhere if you have that. Also, let's say you say, okay, I won't put military on my resume. First of all, you're going to have a shit resume because you got high school diploma followed by nothing. And second of all, they could do a background check, which is normal for not all employers, but many. And they'll know that you were in the military, and they'll find the dishonorable discharge. That'll be like the first thing they fucking find when they look you up. And then they won't hire you. So here's why it's basically get a vaccine or have a hard time finding a job for a long time.
So here's why I think that is very interesting, because there's already some evidence that a lot of people who are very publicly against the vaccine, if their choice is the vaccine or their job, they suddenly just very quietly get the vaccine and shut up. Or they stay loud, but they get the vaccine. And I don't care. If they get, as long as they get the vaccine, I do not care otherwise. I just want people to get that stupid shot.
Now, this is what I'm about to say is obviously a very simplistic, generalized thinking that clearly is not a model for the world, right? It's a broad generalization. But, you know, the image of this that I see is that there's some people, right? People who with logic and reason, right? And they respond to logic and reason and carrot, right? It's like, right? And then, you know, and if you look, Democrats, people on the left, right? We tend to be like, anti-punishment, anti-prison, right? We tend to be people who like, you know, look at people like water protectors who are like, they believe they're doing the right thing. They'll go to prison for it. Right? You know, Gandhis and Martin Luther Kings, right? People who punishment does not, you know, change their mind. Right? And they're the same people who don't believe in punishment of people, that it's wrong, that it doesn't help. Right? But meanwhile, on the right, you have people who very much believe in punishing others. Right. And they're like, yeah, you got to, you know, punish people. That's what gets people's behavior to change. And yet they are also people whose behavior changes with punishment. They respond to stick. So the people who don't respond to stick tend to not believe. There tends to be a correlation with people who they don't believe in using the stick to coax behavior out of other people, and they also don't respond.
You somehow came to the thing I'm actually going to say. You came to it from a similar angle.
Right. People who believe in using the stick as a motivational tool, right? Punish people to change the behavior of other human beings are people who themselves respond to stick, right? So what we need to do is, if what I'm saying in general is true, then I think it's starting to happen is we start with vaccine. We started with carrot. And it's like we got all the carrot people. Yeah. Right? It's like if those people respond to stick, give them the stick. Yep. Right? You believe, right? It's like if that's true that some people respond to one thing and some people respond to the other, there isn't one way to motivate all humans to, you know, behave a certain way. Go to each person and customize the way you motivate them. Oh, you're not going to get a vaccine, but you will if I threaten to beat the shit out of you. Guess what? You're a person who responds to beatings. You get beatings if you don't behave.
So we can move on.
Who doesn't respond to beatings. I could beat you to kingdom come, and you still would sit at the counter in Walgreens anyway because you believe it's right. No beatings for you. They don't work. Instead, we're gonna, you know, do something.
Give you civil rights.
Exactly. We're gonna give you what you want.
For the last thing I'll say on this, the reason I brought this news up is it's one level higher than that. The U.S. military, and I don't want to give this could be a whole show, but we got to move on to the rest of the show tonight.
Well, the military only uses they use metals. I guess they have carrot too.
Yeah, there's carrots there. But here's my thinking. I have a hypothesis, and I'm really invested in this. Like I want to see if this pans out. The U.S. military has a problem in that not the majority, but there is a significant white supremacist presence within the U.S. military for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of.
I mean, I think it's slight. I think from what I've seen, it's lower than in the police. But it's
definitely lower than in the police.
It's still a shockingly large percentage. Yes. It's just not like 50%, you know.
Okay, so that is like
it's not a tiny percentage like 1, and it's not 50. It's somewhere in the middle.
So that is like step 1, like assumption 1, that there is a white supremacist problem within the U.S. military. A subset of the U.S. military are dangerous white supremacists.
That's an absolute fact, yeah.
Yep. So let's assume another thing that we also know is true. The overlap between people who affirmatively resist the vaccine for conspiracy reasons and people who are white supremacists, that Venn diagram starts to approach a circle far more so than other types of Venn diagrams in this space.
It's not a perfect circle, but it's approaching one indeed, yes.
Very
strong correlation.
For white supremacists in the U.S. military then, one of two things is going to happen. Either they believe this stuff so much that they'll accept the dishonorable discharge, and there will be fewer white supremacists in the military. Not zero, but fewer. Or The white supremacists want to remain in the military so much, they'll get the goddamn vaccine. And guess what? Fine. At least you got the vaccine. One of the things you're doing shittily in your life is less likely to kill someone.
Yeah. You're right. If you want to kill other people, you have to kill them, you got
to kill them with guns and systemic oppression. You can't kill them by spreading COVID to them without a vaccine. So that is the thing that I think is interesting here.
It's a positive thing for sure. And I think in general, I think that more places in our society, it's like, yeah, people are going to fake their vaccination record and some places aren't going to check as strongly as others. But yeah, the more places that say no vax, not allowed to come in, period, I think that is probably sufficient stick that will get us. I don't think it's going to get us like 99% vaccinated, but it's going to get us well over the line. I think, just guessing, like half the resisting people would probably be convinced by that.
So imagine half of them get the vaccine.
They wanted to do something.
Half of them get the vaccine and the other half get a stick.
Maybe. Well, the stick they get is, you're going to either have to get a fake thing or you're going to have, and I think another thing we could do is, put in some sort of, a punishment for people who are using a fake or faking it.
Oh yeah. If an outbreak happens and you're part of it and it's shown that you faked your vaccine, that should be a felony.
Yeah, a felony is fine. Just there should be a severe punishment for faking it. But I don't think we should go around like trying to find people.
No.
It's not like no cops like standing at bars checking everyone who comes in. None of that nonsense.
But anyway, things of the day. So we're playing Blades in the Dark pretty regularly through this whole quarantine. I fucking love that system. We keep playing it, and a lot of we interact with a lot of cults for a lot of reasons. Like we're doing a lot of cult stuff lately. So what I have here, my thing of the day, this is a Warhammer themed, but it doesn't matter that it's Warhammer. Just Warhammer happens to be a good avenue for this. This is a cult random name generator, and every single time you click generate cult name, solid fucking gold comes out of this generator. Let's see right now. The Sons of the Insatiable Twilight, the Covenant of the Baleful Onslaught, the Descenders of the Perfect Sigil, the Fraternity of...
always the something of the something?
Yeah, the Fraternity of Conquering Pleasure, the Legion of the Nubile Beast.
The Nubile Beast?
So, our Blades in the Dark game, every cult we encounter is just the next click in this name generator, and it is delightful.
Okay.
So what do you got?
So there is a human being who is an amazing person that doesn't get thought of or spoken about as much as they deserve, and that person is Mr. T.
Weirdly, such a fixture in my childhood, Mr. T.
Mr. T was big in the 80s, and then, was still around. He's still around today. He's alive. But yeah, not as popular now. He's also old.
Yeah.
But he was a big deal in the 80s. If any, for example, you look at this video, that's my thing of the day, which is Mr. T on Letterman in 1982. I was 0 or 1. I wasn't even 1 yet when this, or even when Mr. T was on Letterman. So this was the height of Mr. T. This was Rocky, was it 3 that Mr. T was in? I think, yeah. So Rocky 3 was coming out. So Rocky 3 is as old as me. And Mr. T was on Letterman promoting Rocky 3 in that same year that I was born. And that's what this thing of the day video is. So if Mr. T was at his peak when I was born, of course, he's only really going to be a fixture in the childhood. He wasn't able to remain a prominent public figure longer than, 10, 20, right?
Yeah, I don't think people younger than us know. I don't think people a generation younger than us really even know who he is. Maybe they know one quote, but don't actually know like why that's a quote.
Everyone knows that.
Yep, everyone knows that, even if they don't know where it came from.
Yeah, but Mr. T is a fascinating, amazing, and incredible person, and you can really, see. This is like you can see what he was like. That like this is what he was just becoming more famous like at this time. And you can see in this video why he was able to become famous, like how the kind of person he was, right, allowed him to achieve fame. And yeah, I highly recommend, I guess, this was before frickin' A-Team, right? He wasn't on that yet. So yeah, you can, Mr. T is worth your time.
Yeah, A-Team ran from 1983 to 1987.
Yeah, the A-Team didn't exist when when this thing of the day video was recorded.
God, this was a long time ago. I'm just
It's old as us, yeah.
So in the meta moment, we got no cons. Like, we're not going to PAX for obvious reasons. In fact, we're specifically not going to PAX because it's too soon for conventions. But we'll see how things go for future conventions after this upcoming PAX West. The panel we did at the most recent PAX Online is just on YouTube with slides, Atari game design. You can just watch it. The GeekNights Book Club book remains The Tale of Genji. To do a brief checkpoint, because I'm powering through. I'm about a little over
percentage.
I'm approaching a third of the way through. I'm at like 31%.
Let me check my Kindle percentage because actually I haven't read in a little while.
Yeah. But
I might have to catch up.
You might have to. But to checkpoint, because the last few episodes I said, like, oh, Genji's kind of sleepwalking through life.
I'm only 19%.
Oh. So now that I'm a little further, the pedo thing just keeps that just bunny drops all the way through the rest of the stupid book.
100%.
And two, now that, there's the incident where a ghost kills someone he is banging in a haunted mansion. Like, that happens pretty early on, actually. But it is very clear in retrospect, like getting further into the book, that Genji has malaria. He probably got malaria during that bit. And because, the people in that household were sick, and then the woman died, and then later he's seeing the wise man in the woods because he has recurring fevers. Malaria was a thing in Heian era Japan.
I knew he was sick, but I didn't realize it was malaria specifically.
It's recurring fevers that would come and go throughout the rest of his life. It keeps coming up. Yeah. So
I know that. I just didn't know that. I just didn't recognize it as malaria until you just said something.
Yeah, like did
you look that up?
Nope. It just suddenly clicked when yet again he's having fevers and isn't feeling well. Just like, well, that makes sense. And also, all the people who died in that house with the ghost and everything, probably also just malaria, it seems. That just seems to fit.
How come he hasn't died of it yet? He's living
a lot of people just live with malaria. Like, you can just survive it. Also, he's only like 18 at that point.
Oh, that's true. He's still kind of young, yeah.
Yeah, like he is now about 20 as far as I've gotten in the book. Like, it moves pretty slow. But the only thing I'm struggling with, like the thing that I have the most trouble with reading this book as I get further and further along, I'm used to a lot of the conventions it uses, but what I'm struggling with is how there will be like multiple paragraphs that are covering a span of like 10 seconds, and then the next paragraph will be someone saying a line, but it is like a month later in a different place.
Yeah.
And there is no transition whatsoever. And it's almost like, wait, when did this guy show up? Oh, no, it's a month later. Okay, whatever. And I guess I see what's going on now. Like, that just keeps happening to me.
It slows down to like describe a scene in detail. Like, they're at the festival and so dances, and then so-and-so dances, and then so-and-so dances really well.
Yep.
So-and-so, the other people do a shitty dance.
And then it's like, His Excellency has something to say to Genji. It's like, His Excellency was not at this party. What the fuck?
Right. And then it's like, it slows down to detail on something, and then it's like, all right, the next part of our story is, Genji's off doing it. It's like, what?
Yep. But it doesn't ever say the next part of our story. It's just the next the next line someone says is months later.
Yeah, and then you restart the paragraph.
Yep. And you're like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. I'm glad the chapters all have a little bit like, here's who's in the chapter and roughly how old Genji is.
Yep.
Without that, I would just be lost.
That's why you need this edition, the full unabridged, edition.
I mean, from what I've got, like, even if you're reading it in the original Japanese, it's such archaic Japanese that it would be like us trying to read early Middle English.
I mean, Emily, who speaks and reads Japanese, I guess she technically, I don't know what counts as fluency, right? She passed the test thing, right? So
yeah, she's close.
Yeah, she says it's like if you speak English but you try to read Shakespeare, it's like, yeah, you read it, but it's not so straightforward, right?
Yeah, I get the impression that Shakespeare is pretty easy to read relative to modern English compared to reading Heian era court Japanese.
Right, but I think it probably is harder than us reading Shakespeare, but it's still the same idea. Where it's your language. You've seen those words, but you read the sentence and your brain doesn't actually create an image of what the sentence means, and you have to consciously force it.
But also, it's funny how
difference between just breathing unconsciously and breathing on purpose.
But also, Genji, it's easy to say like, wow, Genji just like cries all the time because there's so many you see where he just like, and then he spent the next 3 days crying and nothing else. But Gotta remember, he's like 17, so that kind of tracks. He's just this weepy teenager.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the main bit. Let's just dive right in because climate change, that is real, obviously. But what's happening?
The biggest one, but there are other things.
There are other things.
An increase of natural disasters of all kinds.
Yep.
Around the entire globe.
But this has accelerated significantly, like to a degree that it is notable, and this needs to be talked about more in the span of the last 6 to 8 months.
And if environmentalists take over the whole world, right, tomorrow, there is, to some extent, nothing we can do. It's going to continue for a while.
Yep,
right?
the conversation, and again,
we're not... The snowball is already rolling down the hill. Our goal is now to slow the snowball, right?
Yes, our goal is to prevent the worst future while simultaneously not preventing current harms and near future harms so much as mitigating those harms. The mitigation is the best we can do for the decades to come.
Right. A lot of people use inevitability, like, oh, yep, there's nothing we can do about that at this point, as an excuse to give up. That
nope. Because if we do nothing, this gets bad.
Even worse.
Like, here's the difference. Say, there's that YouTube video where the guy burns down his entire house in a live stream.
There's water in the ceiling, and it's like, well, I can't afford to fix the roof. Might as well just let it leak, and then the roof collapses on you, and you're crushed.
Yep.
It's like, well, you could have at least put a bucket under it, right? Or like put a piece of plastic on the roof or something.
Yep. So what we're going to talk about today is not that so much as the natural disasters themselves. And I guess what we're defining as a natural disaster, climate and weather disasters count, even though they are ostensibly, especially currently, pretty much directly caused by humans. But that is different from like an industrial disaster or a dam collapsing where there was
often they're combined, right? One can cause the other,
Yep.
Like an earthquake messing up your nuclear power plant, Japan, right?
Yep.
Like that.
But we're going to focus on a natural disaster where there was not a discrete human cause in a direct, immediate causal chain.
Right. Well, the first natural disaster that at least the one I have the most experience with personally in my life is the hurricane, which if you live in the other side of the world is a cyclone. It's just a huge ass fucking storm that spins its way over everything with crazy winds and rain.
I mean, I grew up in hurricane. Like I grew up in a tornado place where tornadoes that cause serious damage happen often.
Yeah, but you didn't experience hurricanes, I don't think.
Nope, didn't experience hurricanes. In my own life,
Sandy was the only hurricane you experienced?
Yeah, because the other hurricanes that hit New York, we were actually out of town during them.
Okay, so I experienced Hurricane Andrew and some other ones I forget the name of.
I lived,
basically in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, Connecticut, there were hurricanes that, hit us in Connecticut. And I remember the most damage I remember is mostly like trees coming down.
Yep.
We had like a little shed that we would like put a lawnmower in. It just got like blown away. I remember during one hurricane, might have been Andrew, I think. The neighbors across the street obviously couldn't go to the store. I put on a raincoat and I brought them, I forget it was eggs or sugar. I had to get, right?
Yep.
And it was basically like the wind was like pushing me. It was hard to walk across the street because of being pushed by wind. And also there was so much rain. It was like basically someone was hitting you, like shooting a fire hose and aiming at you on purpose.
Yep. But it's interesting.
It wasn't even like at the level of I could see I was able to successfully walk across the street. It was not at the level of like, an even stronger hurricane would like just knock, trees over.
Yep.
Right. Trees weren't coming down then, but it was still that bad.
It's interesting that, you living in Connecticut and then New York, me living in Michigan and then New York, we just happen to have, for a lot of reasons, lived in places that have relatively few and relatively rare natural disasters.
Well, I was born in these places, but then once I was able to choose where I lived, I intentionally chose to live in places with few natural disasters.
Well, like I would say, honestly,
it wasn't the only factor, but it was a significant factor. If there weren't earthquakes and mudslides and fires in California, I may have been willing to go work over there in Silicon Valley, before I hated the culture there.
And before I realized there's no mass transit over there.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about, but I wasn't thinking about the culture or the mass transit in the early.
Yeah, me either. When I was young,
college,
like
right?
LA and New York were two big cities, and now that
So
I'm older, I realize that one is a hellscape and one is amazing.
Right. So when I graduated college at that time, the natural disasters were like probably on the pro con scale, like enough to tip the
Oh, yeah?
scale away from California.
Similarly,
Nowadays, they're
my
just one of many
family,
things tipping the scale away from California.
my family has been in the like on this continent for a very long time. Like some of them were pre-revolution, and the entire family converged from moving around all over to eventually be in the Midwest, partly because, like we know some family history, that region has very few natural disasters and is extremely stable and safe.
Yeah, I don't know why so many people keep going to Florida.
Like
It's
Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Ontario, like that area is honestly one of the safest places in the entire earth from natural disasters. Like literally, no joke, no exaggeration. It'll be interesting as climate change accelerates natural disasters, what happens, because Detroit and Chicago and Buffalo and Toronto end up being the biggest cities that are in the safest zone on Earth.
Yeah, but they're on the Great Lakes. But
the Great Lakes are very safe. The Great Lakes,
Indeed.
Not only are they very safe, but they are a supply of fresh water. They're one of the largest supplies of fresh water on Earth.
Yep. And the question though is, obviously, have the melting ice caps, right? But that's in the ocean. That's not in the lake, right? But that water, can make it to the lake eventually, right? If water will eventually.
But the Great Lakes, due to the lock systems, like not to go too deep into the hydrology of it, they can be drained at a whim. If they were rising too high,
to somewhere,
you just drain it to the ocean.
Sure.
There's canals. No, there's canals and locks and shit.
Yeah, but I'm just saying is like, it's not 100% perfect, right? There could be, depending on, the rate of water level rising, right? On the coast there, it definitely won't be as bad as on the
The thing is, historically, the lakes were shrinking because of climate change, but now weather patterns have shifted.
That also gives you some time to, some space there. Right?
No, but weather patterns shifted, and honestly, because it would be easy to drain them compared to fill them, the fact that they're... Oh, no, I'm just saying the fact that
It's pretty safe. I'm just saying there's...
Oh, no, I'm saying that the fact that the...
change continues, that safety barrier, which will keep them safer than ocean coast places for quite a while, will eventually also fall.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying for the foreseeable, like, even, like, many hundreds of years.
Much longer safe headway before it's just a flood than New York does.
Like, that, if things get bad and the coast collapse, honestly, I go back to Michigan. Like, that's, again, I have the privilege of being able to just travel and escape things.
I can just, well, you gotta get out of here somehow.
Yeah. But in terms of...
go somewhere.
But also
in terms of me, I don't have family in Michigan, but nothing stopped me from going to Michigan.
Yeah. But in terms of,
want to go there.
But in terms of like that aspect, like dealing with natural disasters, one thing that, and this is like coming from a position of extreme luck and privilege. Every natural disaster I've ever experienced for my personal interactions in day-to-day life, they were positive or enjoyable because they didn't actually affect me materially.
Yeah,
and that is an interesting thing to experience. Like Hurricane Sandy, to be really honest, knowing what like the horrors that were happening in my own day-to-day life, it was just a really nice break from work. It was interesting weather. I went biking around in a city that was completely shut down. Like everything I did on a day-to-day basis was just novel, interesting, and fun. So it's weird to think back and like, oh yeah, I could almost be nostalgic for Hurricane Sandy.
Well, I mean, think about the most awesome of natural disasters, right? The volcano eruption, right? And the volcano eruption is like the perfect illustration of the duality in that if you live at the bottom of the fucking volcano and your whole, your society is now burned away, that's the worst thing ever, right? It's like nothing worse can happen than volcano on your house, right? What natural disaster is worse than that?
Asteroid hitting your house.
No, because that would be a faster and swifter death than a volcano, right? The volcano is terrifying. It's like, right?
No, the pyroclastic whatever would kill you pretty much instantly.
Like, I would rather have a tornado hit my house than a volcano hit my house, Right?
No, tornado, you'd probably survive in the rubble and then die days later of thirst.
It depends. It depends, but at least I'm hiding in the basement. Whenever the volcano comes, you don't hide in the basement from volcano. Right?
Yeah.
So, but if you are just far away from the volcano watching it, it's just, it pollutes the sky. But it's like, it's just kind of awesome. And, when it's people will go up to erupting volcanoes and like check out the lava, geologists and shit. And it's like, you watch that in videos. It's like totally cool, right? It's like this awesome, neat thing as long as it's not hitting a person.
Like when I was a kid, when I was in middle school, there was a blizzard, like a dangerous, like super huge blizzard in Michigan. Like it shut down.
I don't know if blizzard really comes into I guess maybe because it's of where I live. There's so many nor'easters and blizzards. And
The thing is, we live.
Feel like it's natural disaster.
No, that's actually because the listener was talking about this in the chat too.
It's a weather event.
People who live in the Midwest and the East Coast, like New York and Boston and places like that, blizzards we barely treat as natural disasters because there is so much infrastructure, knowledge, expertise, skill, and just being used to shit about blizzards that if 6 feet of snow come down, we just fucking deal with it. But meanwhile, go even a little bit south to like Georgia, and if there is a 1/4 inch of snow, hundreds die and things are shut down for weeks. But when I was a kid in Michigan, in middle school, there was a blizzard so bad that parts like southeast Michigan shut down. Like that is a big deal. We had 7-ish feet of snow on our house. Like we could not get out. We had to get out the second window and then dig out the front door. And you know what my kid memory is? No school for 2 weeks. Fuck you. Coupled with, I'm going to go out and explore all day. This is going to be awesome. And then followed by
snow tunnel.
I'm going to sled from the roof to the street.
Yeah.
Actually, my parents did not let me do that. To this day, I'm disappointed that they would not let me do that.
Did you at least jump out the window into the 7 feet of
Oh, yeah. Even better, I went out hiking through the woods and everything. It was such a good time.
How could you even see the woods? Wouldn't it just be snow?
Woods are way taller than 7 feet.
You have to dig to walk, right?
I got put on snowshoes and went out.
Oh, you stood on top of it all.
Oh yeah, because again,
you were 7 feet in the air.
I'm an outdoor type person. My family's been outdoorsy.
You weren't at ground level digging.
No.
7 feet. You were 7 feet up walking.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm a Michigander. If there's snow, I have snowshoes and I'm walking on top of it because I'm not stupid.
Yeah, we didn't have snowshoe, but okay. But that makes a lot more sense. I thought you were like, I thought you're digging a tunnel.
But that was a dangerous situation because that is a place where people do not prepare for a blizzard shutting things down because even once every century level blizzards can be mitigated very quickly. And this blizzard was bad enough to where we could not mitigate it quickly. So no one was prepared for it. But even at that time in my life, it was just a really pleasant week. I didn't have to deal with any of the problems of the natural disaster. I just enjoyed it.
Right. Well, I mean, think about, I mentioned earthquake, right? In California, the buildings are designed around earthquake. They have all sorts of earthquake protections in them. So it's like if an earthquake happens there, it's like, yeah, it's still going to damage. It's not great, right?
Yep.
There's a certain level of, at least if it's above a certain severity level, right? But, the buildings aren't going to, like the big skyscrapers are very unlikely to just like fall down and cause, Godzilla level destruction.
Yep. But if a real earthquake hit New York.
If you had a big earthquake in New York City where the buildings are not designed for earthquake, we are in deep shit.
Yep. Years ago when there was that really, really minor earthquake that slightly shook New York like a tiny bit, the buildings here swayed so much that people, like I was on the street and I did not feel the earthquake, but suddenly out of nowhere, people started yelling and running out of the subway. And I saw people running out of buildings. And all I'm thinking is, what the fuck's going on? What the fuck's going on? Because I had no context for that because the buildings are so not earthquake ready and so old that if you're like on the 16th or 20th floor of one of these like 100-year-old New York buildings,
you'll feel it.
It swayed enough to where people started running and yelling.
Yep. So that's the thing.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we covered what? Volcano, hurricane, tornado, earthquake. I guess there's sort of the thing that goes with earthquake, which is tsunami, right?
Yep. Don't have to deal with those in New York yet.
Which goes with flood. Flood really accompanies like almost everything. It's like, so many disasters are water related, and like, even if you're far away from the ocean, like tornado can cause flood if it breaks a water main or a dam breaks, or it's like floods are just like the like everything. They're all over the place.
Yep. Flood is actually
even in the desert you get flash flood, right?
Flood is actually one of the few natural disasters I actually have a like kind of specific plan, like contingency plan around in my actual life.
No matter where you are, you got to worry about flood situations.
Even if you live in the desert, like flash floods are actually way more dangerous in dry places than they are in wet places.
I think they're getting more common as well.
They are.
I'm noticing the flooding in New York City has definitely gotten worse.
Though there was that. We talked about this in real life. We didn't talk about it on the show. So there's a thing that happened during COVID. New York City has this thing that's not common in a lot of places called alternate side parking, but it is a thing in other places. Meaning, on a few days a week, where if you're parked on certain streets, you got to move your car to the other side of the street. And then the next day, you got to move it back. Like, you can't leave your car somewhere.
Right. It's like between these hours, right, from 8 in the morning to 1, you can't park on the left side of the street today. And then tomorrow, same hours, but you can't park on the right side of the street.
Now, naive people and car people have made an argument for a long time that these rules are archaic and they're just to discourage street parking, which is not true. Those rules actually...
street parking, we would just charge for it everywhere.
Those rules actually came from the New York City's, like, ancient, like it was a different organization at the time, but basically the Department of Sanitation and Human Welfare type stuff.
Right.
Because the only reason they do it is so they can sweep the streets, and the reason they sweep the streets is so the streets aren't filled with garbage.
Right. So it's like you might think, oh, well, just cleanliness, right? We just want to keep the city clean. We need you to move your cars so we can clean the curb and all the filth that's piled up in the curb.
Yep.
That's true. It is for that reason. But it's also because when filth piles up on the street, it blocks all the drains.
Yep. So during COVID,
that causes floods.
The city decided to reduce alternate street parking from twice a week to once a week, and car people were really happy. So they decided to keep it that way permanently because car people were happy. And it turns out that is why we had so much flash flooding in New York now.
That's true, but there was even before COVID, the flooding has been getting worse.
Yep, it was getting worse, and then it went beyond the tipping point way earlier because we're not sweeping the streets twice a week.
We pushed it a little harder by not sweeping enough. But the point is, we're getting rained on harder, more rain.
Yep.
Right? The river, the sea is rising on us. And flooding is going to be a thing here if you live near the water. And New York City is an island. Manhattan's an island, at least.
And, like, you've got to, like, my advice to you is you have to internalize the fact that for the rest of your life, even if we do everything right and things get better and we, like, correct this course as a species, which I'm hopeful we will, nothing is going to prevent the next decade of your life from being weird and there being more natural disasters. Like, more enough to where you have to start preparing for things that you have never had to worry about before.
Right? Because you think, oh, up on a mountain, I won't get flood. Yeah, up on the mountain where you'll get mudslide instead.
Yep.
Right? It's like, oh, well, I'm out here, it's like, well, in the woods, well, there'll be a fire in the woods. Like, look at, again, the West Coast, right? Everything's on fire.
At this point, I believe that is the second largest wildfire in the recorded history of North America.
But Greece and Turkey are on fire. You don't think about those as places.
Oh my God,
crazy forest.
Turkey, Turkey is the nation of Turkey is on fire. It's barely even making the news because of all the other disasters happening. Go look at what's happening in Turkey right now. It is terrifying. And I saw the best tweet.
Greece is the same thing.
The tweet that encapsulated this so well was like, it basically said, I'm paraphrasing, climate change means that you'll be watching natural disasters on your phone with increasing frequency until eventually you're going to be the one recording it on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it's going to go. No amount of money and privilege will protect you from this.
Yeah, it's like, no, even if you're like, I can't imagine, you're Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos, right? It's like, there's nowhere you can run or hide from natural disaster.
Yep,
right?
money will only get you so far.
Do. You live on a boat. That's not going to do it. Hurricane will come and knock your boat over.
Now because we've gone on long enough, the show went long. Every show goes long because we don't talk to each other that much in real life right now. So this is when we like get everything out that's pent up.
We'll fix that. We'll fix that next week.
Yep. But next week I feel like a dam's just gonna like burst out of my brain of me saying weird shit that I've been bottling up for 2 years, or a year and a half. But anyway, so I guess the two big takeaways to end this is one, don't like catastrophize and doom and gloom. Like, don't go overboard planning and preparing. Like, there's a line that's too far.
Do not be a prepper. So, for example, New York City actually has, what's it called?
Well, we have the evacuation.
There's there's a whole department.
Oh, yeah. Well, New York City actually is very well prepared to deal with natural disasters. Like, there are contingency plans that can be triggered that are surprisingly well thought out. Like, there are ways to evacuate New York City. Think about that for a second, what the scale of that kind of thing would mean. That is
there's the New York City like Department of Emergency Management. It's like a whole thing specifically for emergency management in New York City, a whole department. And you can go and they have websites and they have all these tools. Like, this is full-time job for a whole department worth of people. And you can follow them and get informed, and they help you out with like basically everything, right? So and it's not, prepper level in the woods stuff. It's common sense stuff, right? Everything from like check your freaking smoke detector to if what flood zone is your house in, and where will you evacuate to, and how will you know if it's time to evacuate, and whatnot.
Yep.
So wherever you live, I don't know how your government or whatever handles those things, but there's going to be something. If you have this enough technology to hear a podcast, you have some sort of emergency management something.
Yep. Go learn what the deal is, so that if anything goes wrong and there's a disaster, you know what to expect and how much help could arrive when.
Right, and learn the reasonable level of stuff that what you need to know, right? Don't go overboard, right? Into
I'll give you an example.
Territory.
You know what my prep is?
You don't need that.
You want to know what my prep is? Because I can explain it very succinctly. I have plans, like real plans, to survive, escape, and deal with natural disasters only as far as could I get far enough away from New York City within about a day to where it's not a problem anymore. And anything where that would not save me, I do not worry about.
Yeah, it's like if there's a nuke, which is not a natural disaster, it's an unnatural disaster. But it's like, well, there's nothing I can really do about that. Right?
Depends on what kind of nuke. Actually, if it's a non-thermonuclear nuke, there are very specific.
You get the idea. If I'm in like the incineration zone, it's like I just call. I call people and say, I love you. I'm gonna die until the phone stops working.
But I guess what I've changed about those plans in the last year, specifically because of the acceleration of climate change related natural disasters, is I have added something to that plan that I never worried about before. Being able to get fresh water that is safe to drink for myself within 100 miles of New York City if the water supply stops.
I just have water, in bottles. So
do you want, actually, I have some extra life straws now if you want one to keep as a backup.
I mean, I don't think that's going to be necessary, right?
They're useful for camping and hiking anyway.
The amount of water that I have in my fridge at any given time, if that's not enough water to get probably me and a few other people away from the disaster, right? It's like, well, we're not going to get away from it.
Well, what I would say is you need, this is my personal assessment. If you're less athletic, you need more probably, or you need to go read some other expert things. But my rule for myself and Emily, like together, because we hike a lot, is I would have at minimum 1 liter of water per person per, 10 miles of difficult travel that would be necessary to escape.
I guess that depends if the disaster has prevented bicycling.
Yeah, but because here's the thing. In a disaster, you need to understand that cars don't work anymore, and bikes that are not mountain bikes often might not work anymore either.
It depends on the disaster.
Yeah, but even traveling by foot, most people cannot travel more than 10 miles on foot in America without suffering effectively a casualty incident, meaning they cannot walk further after that. For reason, it's too much to get into. That's an old.
New Yorkers can walk further.
New Yorkers can, but the average American cannot. This was something terrifying I learned from America's. This is all declassified military stuff. In the 50s, the U.S. government had a thing where they were looking at what would happen if a city got nuked, and they were looking at old baby nukes, not modern thermonukes, and they identified that the primary source of casualties would be that the average American could not walk 5 miles without suffering an event that incapacitated them. And the event was blisters.
Even without the nuke, if you just got someone out of their house and be like, hey,
walk 5 miles.
Let's walk 5 miles right now. Let's go. Walk 5 miles nonstop. They couldn't do it.
Yep, it is because blisters caused by the fact that most Americans do not walk that much in their daily lives. Like it's just a really terrifying calculus. So the military and the U.S. government made plans around the fact that a huge number of casualties, like unsavable, incapacitated, immobile people would occur even if they just asked everyone to walk 10 miles away from a place. So yeah,
I guess that's a reasonable thing you can do, actually, if you're worried about natural disasters of any kind.
Yeah, walk more.
Is just make your body more fit, as you know. You don't have to become athlete fit.
Yeah, you don't have to be like me. You don't run a half marathon every weekend or something stupid like that. Just be able to walk over the course of an entire day 10 miles.
Right, you should be able to walk 10 miles in a day.
Like 8 or 9 hours of walking.
Not unsupplied, not fast walking.
Yeah,
right?
a leisurely stroll.
The course of the day with resting, eating, drinking, you don't have to carry a heavy load with you, right? Just within a 24-hour period, you have covered 10 miles of distance on your own 2 feet, right? If you can do that, then you can evacuate, right? Even if, all of this is really bad news.
And that is the kind of thing that is prudent to do now because...
In fair weather. Right?
One, walking enough to be able to do that will be super good for you. And two, that is something that that is not a skill or an ability you can gain quickly. You can't be like, well, I'm going to go buy the ability to walk 10 miles tomorrow. Like, no, you got to work at it a little bit.
You could buy a gas mask tomorrow. You could buy a water filter tomorrow. You could buy a boat tomorrow. You could buy a life vest tomorrow.
You can't buy the ability to walk 10 miles tomorrow.
Exactly. You could buy a flashlight tomorrow.
Yep. And if you're really paranoid, again, don't be a prepper.
If you're really paranoid, don't be.
Yeah. But the maximum planning I think anyone should do for this kind of thing, in America at least, is have the kind of stuff that people who go backpacking and camping have and know how to use it with a bare minimum of competence and be able to camp and make your way on your own for maybe a day. Like a day.
Even that's kind of too far. It's like you need water, you need something to keep your blanket.
But water. You know how hard it is to carry enough water for a person without a Camelback or an equivalent? It's actually really hard for humans to do that.
I'm just saying, you have water.
Yeah.
Right.
That is, yeah. What do you think?
It's just like just a gallon of Poland Spring in the closet, whatever. Right. You don't need if you're not camping, don't go buy like a camping stove. Right? Or don't go buy some fancy tent.
But like a life straw, they're like $10, and you know what they let you do? Just stick the straw into any source of non-salt water out in the wild, and it's totally safe to drink.
It doesn't work on salt water.
No, salt water. Nobody who is not already an expert in survival shit should even consider any possible means of getting drinkable water from salt water. Just that is not worth your effort.
That reminds me, we'll just end the show on this. I think this will be my thing of the day.
Ooh.
So I guess you can Google it in the if you want to watch it before it becomes my thing of the day. This dude did a YouTube video. He went on a nuclear submarine. They let him on. And he showed the
desalinization.
Well, they had that, yes, but he showed the 2 different ways they make oxygen and the machines that do it. Well, machines in quotes, right? But,
I think I know.
He also discussed the desalinization and where they get the water from and such.
That actually reminds me. I'll leave us
water to get oxygen.
So I'll leave you with this. This is like because it's a related thing that's cool. You know the tragedy of the HMS Terror and the HMS Erebus, where everyone went crazy and died in the Arctic. We've talked about it before.
Yes.
We read the book. So they all went crazy because of lead poisoning. The lead poisoning was because the boats were very modern. They had steam power. so they could go through the water, and they saved a shitload of space by not having to carry water because the steam could be used to the steam system also desalinated salt water because they needed to be able to desalinate it to run the steam engine. So
it's a lot easier to desalinate when you have a nuclear power plant.
Exactly. The only reason that was a bad idea was that the entire thing was made out of lead.
Yeah. Oh, we have a nuclear reactor. Oh, well, we can desalinate all the fucking water we want, can't we? As long as your desalination machine keeps working.
Yeah, that's kind of the cool thing about nuclear reactors is that once one's going, like especially one in like a naval nuclear reactor, you put fuel in one of those and they just run for 10 to 20 years. So
it's like as long as all this shit works and doesn't break, it's like it's pretty great.
Yep.
So you know who's really safe from natural disasters? Nuclear submarine.
Why do you think there's a lot of dystopian sci-fi stories where the last humans on Earth are the people manning nuclear submarines hiding under the Arctic?
Usually, I think the story these days is space station people.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Yeah. All right.
I think we're good.
There should be one. Someone should make one. So I actually just watched one of those Netflixes I watched.
Ooh.
Was about that. It was about like the world ends. It seems to be nuclear war that ended the world. And there's one dude left up in the Arctic, right? And he's everyone like evacuated the Arctic base except for him. And he tries to communicate. It's a George Clooney thing. He's like he directed it. He's the star of it, right? Everything. And he communicates with this space mission that is returning from a Jupiter moon that is suitable for human life. And he's basically trying to tell them, don't come back, right? Because he's like, you're the last ones alive. But you just made me think, it's like, hey, you could tell that same story where it's space station and nuclear sub best friends are still alive.
Pretty sure that story has been written multiple times if we actually
and
look
they communicate with each other, right?
I read one a long time ago. I don't know what it was called, but it was basically all the great power, like the US, the UK, France, like all the countries that had nuclear submarines, all the people who manned all those submarines, like the Soviet Union, everyone, were the only people left. And they're all like, yeah, why even be enemies if everyone else is dead? Let's all just meet somewhere and figure out how to rebuild society. Oh shit, it's only men because militaries are sexist. The end. It was a really good story. I don't remember what it was called. It was short. It was not.
Are there women? I mean, we have.
No, the U.S. I don't believe there is any country where women are allowed to serve on nuclear submarines.
There has never been a woman serving on a nuclear submarine ever?
I don't believe so.
There weren't any in the video I watched on you. This is my thing of the day.
I don't believe so, but I'm not sure.
What if they made an all-woman nuclear submarine?
That would be awesome, and we should.
Would we like win all the wars with that? That they would never lose, right?
All right, I gotta go eat some food.
You should of the